The film, based on real events, begins with a historical reference. On January 1, 1863, Abraham Lincoln announced the emancipation of slaves. The camera floats over the Louisiana swamps. Dozens of black slaves work in the cotton fields. Armed horse guards and guards with dogs scurry between them. The main character, a slave named Peter, and his family find solace in the Bible. The guards drag him out into the street, despite the heroic resistance. Only by threatening his wife, the whites can cope with the raging slave. Having shoved Peter into a cage with the others, he is taken away. The family runs after the cart, but the guards chase them away. The cage rolls along the cotton plantations, passing by stakes topped with the heads of escaped blacks. The cart arrives at the Confederate camp, where the wounded are being treated, guns are being cleaned, and soldiers are gaining strength. The newcomers are pulled out and chained together by one chain or led through the mud. A railway is being built nearby. Peter witnesses an exhausted slave being shot when he collapsed. Later, the hero tries to help his partner, who also fell down. The guard points a gun at Peter. But the appearance of two horsemen interrupts the quarrel. Peter returns to work, but is closely watched by a bounty hunter named Fussell, who later brands another fugitive. In the evening, the guards drag a beaten and exhausted black man into a common cage. The hero encourages his fellow sufferers, reminding them that God is with them, but not everyone shares his views. In the morning, the slaves continue to work for the benefit of the white masters. The guards announce a break to quench their thirst, but the impudent Peter, who has been noticed since the last time, is deprived of privileges. He continues to carry weights. Peter accidentally overhears the guards discussing Lincoln's order to free the slaves. The conversation is interrupted by an outburst of anger. One of the guards takes out his anger on a slave boy. Peter stands up for him. He is threatened with a gun again. But Fussell intervenes, whistling to a subordinate to remove the gun so as not to spoil a valuable asset. In the evening, the hunter approaches the cage to remind the hero that he is alive only thanks to him. In order for this information to be better imprinted in the brain, Fussell keeps the dog on a short leash next day near the bound Peter. It is only necessary to loosen his grip, and the beast will bite the slave. At lunch, the hero tells his comrades about Lincoln's order. If they get to Baton Rouge, where the army of the Northerners is located, they will be free. But the way there lies through the swamps, where it's easy to die. However, some slaves are willing to take the risk. Soon Peter is told to remove the dead old man. He drags the body to a pit full of dead slaves, where he throws another corpse. The overseer tells the captured deserters to fill the pit with lime to muffle the stench of corpses, but they refuse. This is work for slaves. Handing the shovel to Peter, the guard tells him to get busy. In the process, the hero notices a security guard sneaking up and threatening him with a gun. While Fussell does not see, he wants to finish what he started, and cocks the trigger. Imagining for a moment that Chris Rock is in front of him, Peter is shoveling potential killers. Having set a fire and cut off one hand, the hero rushes on the run. The rest of the slaves rush into the scattering after him. The guards do not have time to shoot the fleeing, but some fall dead. Fussell takes aim at Peter, but the bullet bites into a tree nearby. When the fugitives disappeared into the thicket and headed for the swamp, the hunters released the hounds and followed the tracks on horseback. Peter and his companions go deeper into the swamps. There is a quagmire and poisonous reptiles under your feet, and hungry dogs and bloodthirsty hunters are stepping on your heels. When they cross the field, the pursuers almost overtake the slaves, but they rush into the water, where alligators are visible. Only one remained on the shore, and he, instead of a reptile, was beaten by dogs. Having reached the opposite shore, the slaves continue on their way, under the cries of pain of a straggler comrade. Fussell calls off the dogs and interrogates the wounded man, promising freedom for information. He learns that the fugitives want to get to Baton Rouge, after which he releases the prisoner. But as soon as he enters the water, the hunter pulls out a revolver and shoots him in the back. Hunters split up to cover a large area. The same thought occurs to Peter. The fugitives go their separate ways. Wounded in the leg, the hero goes to the house, lost in the swampy wilderness. Hiding behind a woodpile, he sneaks to the well to drink water, after which he steals a sheet hanging to dry and a few potatoes. This is noticed by a little girl having lunch with her family on the terrace. She raises the alarm that she hears Fussell, whose dog smelled blood on the leaves nearby. Peter is tying a sheet around his leg when a hunter notices him. The rider rushes to intercept while the hero is sneaking through the ditches. Throwing away the blood-soaked rag, Peter crawls across the path and hides under a snag. While the hunters are wondering where he could have moved, the hero dives into the muddy mud so as not to give himself away. Fassel notices an alligator and suspects that a slave would not have survived next to a predator. The hunters ride on. The hero gets out of the water when an alligator suddenly pops up and bites his ass. Peter, with the help of luck, a stick that turned up in a knife wisely picked up earlier, manages to explain to the predator who is the crown of creation here, and who is a creeping creature. Peter waits out the night in a tree, higher from the ground and predators. With a knife, he picks out the alligator's stuck teeth. In the morning, hunters stumble upon the corpse of an innocently killed alligator. To make sure that the slave did not escape, Fassel orders to open the reptile's belly. It turns out to be empty inside. In the evening, hunters roast alligator meat on a bonfire so that the good does not disappear. They are surprised that the slave defeated the predator. Fassel tells a story from his childhood, when a slave looked after him instead of his dead mother. The father, having learned that her son was secretly feeding her, stabbed the woman right in the field. She bled for 3 days before dying. The moral of the story is that blacks are not as stupid as whites think. Peter, in order to kill his smell, smears himself with mud. He continues his way through the swamps without stopping even at night. The pursuers believe that the fugitive has already died in this wilderness, but Fassel does not want to let things take their course. He needs a body as proof. The hero goes out to a hunting hut set on stilts among the swamps. Climbing inside, he is reinforced with local supplies, not forgetting to look around fearfully from above, if anyone is jumping. Having heated a knife on the cold coals, the hero cauterizes the wound on his thigh. Then, having collected coals in a bucket, he climbs up a tree to the beehive. Having smoked out the owners with smoke, Peter collects honeycombs with honey. Meanwhile, Fassel stumbles upon drops of blood on a bush in the middle of the swamp. Looking around, he notices smoke above the trees, and jumps towards him. Peter climbs into the boat, having previously thrown the snake out of there, and paddles away until he gets rid of his pursuers. Fassel gets to the hut, where he realizes from the tracks that the fugitive was here, and, most likely, swam away on the water. Having swum to the depths, Peter allows himself to relax a little and refresh himself with honey. He moves to the land at a distance, from where he continues on foot. Fassel finds an abandoned boat, and continues the pursuit. At this time, Peter stumbles upon one of those with whom he ran away in the beginning. Threatening with a revolver, he asks if he has brought the dogs. But the hero, having discovered a wild onion, offers them to rub themselves to bring down the trail. The fugitives split up to hide. Peter is like a hobbit hiding in the roots of trees. Hunters together with the dog find a slave sitting upstairs. He refuses to get off, and Fassel knocks him down with a shot. The wounded fugitive falls to the ground. The slave is interrogated, but he does not turn Peter in, even when his throat is cut to save a bullet. The hunter cuts off the slave's head as proof. After telling the assistants to return to the camp, Fassel continues his search. Peter's wife, who remained on the plantation with her children, finds out that she was sold to a new owner. She will be separated from her children and given a new husband to breed and multiply, multiplying the wealth of the owner. She tells her eldest daughter about it. She says that she must run so that they will not be separated. But the mother has another plan. She tells her daughter to come to the barn after work. There, a woman puts her hand into a cotton processing machine, and a hand ground into dust spoils the presentation of a slave. Peter wanders out to the burning estate. Herds of frightened horses are running around, and dead bodies are lying on the lawn. With a knife at the ready, the hero goes inside and rummages through the rooms. Noticing a set table, he satisfies his hunger until the attention is attracted by extraneous noise. In the next room, among a pile of corpses, he notices a black girl who is playing harp strings. Peter takes the girl outside. Dying, she gives him her cross. At this moment, he is being held at gunpoint by a hunter with a rifle. Having ordered to throw away the knife, he orders to go with him, but the hero, remembering his time as Muhammad Ali, knocks out his opponent with a hook. Taking the rifle, Peter wounds the second pursuer, then knocks him out with the butt. Hearing the barking, Peter runs away. Fassel drives up to the house and sees the corpses, and when the wounded subordinate reports where the fugitive ran, he shoots him in cold blood, a fine for incompetence. Fassel chases Peter into the fields when he freezes in place and kills the dog with a pistol shot. At dawn, the fugitive reaches the riverbank. There was a battle, soldiers' bodies and smoke everywhere. Exhausted, Peter lies on his back among the dead and looks at the clouds that are being driven across the sky by the wind. Suddenly, a cannonade is heard in the distance. Some ship is shelling the fortifications on the shore at a distance. Hoping to find Lincoln there, the hero runs forward, but he is cut off by Fassel on a horse. The hunter beats the slave with a whip, after which he dismounts and hands the meat, just like a dog, telling him to serve diligently. But Peter does not obey. Then the hunter pulls out a revolver and points it at the fugitive. A shot rings out. Clutching his throat, Fassel falls, choking on his own blood. Peter is surrounded by black men in military uniforms, the Louisiana Colored Army serving President Lincoln. They take the hero with them to help him. Peter wakes up in a field hospital overflowing with wounded. Cannon shots can be heard nearby. He repeats that he needs to go to his family, but the nurse insists that he must gain strength and recover. The camp is full of life. The blacks who got here are gradually settling in. Peter is asked how old he is, but he has no idea. He talks about his previous owner from a cotton plantation, and about escaping from the railroad. He tells the officer that he has to find his family, but he reminds him that they are in an army camp in the midst of a civil war. The hero is faced with a choice, to work on security or to enlist as a soldier in the ranks of the Northerners. Peter chooses the latter. In the location of the detachment, he finds a third fellow traveler, with whom he escaped. He also managed to get there. In the queue for the uniform, the hero is distracted by two gentlemen who need to talk to him. They are photographers who want to capture for posterity the image of Peter, in particular his back, streaked with terrible scars from the blows of whips. Soon the hero is dressed in black, which is not the first time for him. He talks to the commander, who was born a free man. The command discusses tactical plans. In the morning, a detachment of colored people goes on the attack. The officer pushes an inspiring speech that they are fighting for their freedom. Under the drum roll, they march past the wounded and dead lying down. Soon, comrades to the left and right of Peter fall from bullets, but he, along with the others, bravely goes forward. The squad rushes to attack the Confederate fortifications. Artillery fire puts shells all over the battlefield, but the soldiers are inexorably advancing on the enemy's trenches. Peter is blown into a puddle, where he lies unconscious while the carnage is going on around. When he wakes up, he crawls forward, watching his squad charge under enemy fire. The battle partially turns into a hand-to-hand phase. Trenches are cleaned with bayonets. Peter, lying in hiding, shoots a rifle, hiding behind the corpses from the return fire. He helps the wounded man to find peace, after which he crawls on with his rifle. Having found a wounded fellow traveler, the hero encourages him, after which he leads the remaining fighters into a new attack. The Northerners break into the redoubts of the Confederates, regardless of losses. They manage to get to the guns, minimizing all superiority. By evening, the battle had subsided. The camera flies over a battlefield littered with dozens of dead bodies. Survivors remove the Confederate flag. The column marches to the estate. Peter is among them. They pass by the plantation workers who were captured by the soldiers. The hero sees the former owner, who is shot in the head. The soldiers announce to the slaves that they are now free. Peter looks for his family among the crowd, and then asks the locals where his wife is. He goes into his old house, but there is no one there. The hero wanders among joyful people, looking for a family, for the sake of reuniting with which he went through so much hardship, but he does not find her anywhere. Having already lost hope and despair, Peter suddenly notices the children and his wife. They look at him in disbelief. They rush to each other, hugging and not holding back tears. At this happy moment the film ends.